Welcome to Let's Talk About Confidence. I'm John M. Walsh. My guest today is Ron Cox. Ron's a best-selling author, a Hall of Fame coach, and recently retired Chief Operations Officer of one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. Over nearly 4 decades, he's led organisations across the public sector, private sector, and philanthropy, building high-performance teams, scaling businesses, and developing leaders who outlast the structures they came from. In 2017, he was brought in to help rescue a company running a $2.5 million deficit. 4 years later, that company was generating $1 million a day. His exit came with a 7 times multiple. These are the headline numbers, but they're not the most important thing about Ron Cox. The most important thing is that somewhere in the middle of building all of that, he received a terminal diagnosis. He faced it, he came through it, and then he went back to work. What that experience did to his understanding of performance, of time, of what it actually means to build something worth building, that's what we're here to talk about today. Ron, welcome to Let's Talk About Confidence.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be part of the conversation today and discussion and just see where it takes us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ron, you've spent nearly 4 decades around people, leaders, teams, whole organisations. When you look back, where do you think confidence actually comes from in the people you've worked with and with yourself?
Well, I think sometimes it comes from within your family structure. And then I think other times perhaps it's people you run into, mentors. And then finally, I think it has to do with your friends. So who you associate with, who you hang out with, who you spend time with. I think those are really the three leading factors for me. If I look back and say, who shaped who I am, who was in my community. Sometimes we often call it our tribe
Yeah,
because my wife always says you're guilty by who you associate with. So I think
true.
really those three things, those categories, those define my community and who I am.
And do you think, did you kind of actively seek those people, or was it, I mean, obviously your family, you can't choose your family, but do you find you seek those people as mentors, or does it just happen? How did it work for you?
Well, I don't want to get too deep
Yeah,
into the spiritual or faith, but I think sometimes, you're on this journey and you have to take time to set aside to say, okay, I'm going to discern who these people are and then do some homework. Like I'm going to figure out what's their passion, what's their purpose,
yeah,
what's their community look like, why are they here? And then I discern about it and then I say, okay, I can learn a lot from these people, and I would love to emulate who they are. I would love to do some of the things that they're doing because, early on, they seem to have found their purpose, their passion, and so they really inspired me. Ironically, you said family. For some reason, my grandfather was huge. He sat in a lot of those seats for me. And so, he held me accountable, which I needed to be at a young age. My grandfather and grandmother, took me in elementary school. So during the most impressionable time for a young boy to say, okay, all this foundation and maturity, because I'm very immature, brain development. And so what does that look like and how's that going to help me? And I was blessed in the fact that I think it gave me greater emotional resilience because my grandfather would share his experiences over decades. And I think you and I talked about this earlier. He is a very powerful influencer in my life because he was in the army. He was in the military. He was young right out of high school. He did join a team. When everyone else was saying, what do I want to do with my life? What's my purpose, cause, and passion? He's the one that volunteered and raised his hand and he said, I'm willing to give everything up to and including my life
wow.
for others.
Mm,
And I'm like, boy, that is very inspiring. And so, even though, like you said, you have a lot of options perhaps in your family, because you have to spend time
yeah,
with them.
yeah, yeah,
Some you want to, but others you have to.
yes,
And the reason I was with my grandparents was because my parents weren't the greatest influence on me and made bad decisions. And so, and that didn't get to choose. And so you're right. Even on family, some of them you get to choose, some of them you can't. But on the mentor side, I was, ironically, I got affiliated and inspired by a lot of those men and women in service. And so one day, my son, he knew about my relationship with my grandfather, and through the generations, we shared the stories. And he gave me a book that was called Can't Hurt Me. And he said, Dad, you need to read this book. He goes, I read this book and I think of you. And I said, why is that? And he said, this guy named David Goggins
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
rough, rough childhood, abusive situation, mother scared to death. She escaped in the cover of darkness, took him with her,
Wow.
and just really brave lady. And so I said, okay, I took time. I read it. Then I followed up on a few podcasts. I'm like, boy, there's some similarities there, a purpose. He does his mission. He does his service. He's not satisfied. He's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
I want to be the best. I want to push myself through. I want to be resilient. So SEAL,
Yes.
Army,
Yeah.
Airborne, Air Force. I'm like, boy, I can learn so much from this guy. So my wife could tell that I was inspired, and she said, "You got to meet him."
Yeah.
So she set up a meeting, and I went and met and sit down with David Goggins, and we sat there and had a conversation. And I just let him know, how much he inspired me. He never knew who I was before that day and that moment, but I just told him, just keep it up, keep it up. You're going to divide some people
Yeah.
because of some of the language he uses. But I understand the meaning. And what I learned from him is it's not just the words that come out of his mouth, it's the action.
Yeah.
And you can say whatever you want, but it's the action. And so him, Jason Redmond, I mean, what a warrior. The guy was shot 8 times on the battlefield in Iraq and had 6 blood transfusions and continued to lead his men until he got on the helicopter. Last bullet, unfortunately, went through his cheek and out his mouth, so he couldn't even talk. But people could tell by his nonverbal communication that they're in the fight and they're there to protect and to serve. And when he got back to the United States, he was in the hospital in Bethesda,
Yeah.
and this was one thing that I took from Jason when he and I met and discussed our career, from transitioning in the military and public service, first responder in corporate America. And he said, I sit there and I was in a coma that was induced. I was in and out of consciousness, couldn't communicate, jaws wired shut. And he said some of the care providers, unfortunately, would gather in my room and say, why are we doing this? Why are we spending time? We can't save him. He's not going to make it. And so he could hear this in a subconscious state.
Yeah.
And when he was conscious, he was thinking, huh, this isn't good for morale. This
Yeah.
isn't good for community
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
It's not inspiring.
Yeah.
So his wife came in and he ended up writing a note and he put it on the door of his hospital room. And it literally, and I'll summarize it quickly, but it literally said, I'm going to come back, not at 100%. I'll be 110. You never give up.
Yeah.
And you always, always try to serve and protect and do better and be better. If you don't have that mentality, please don't come into my room because it's contagious and I'm not catching it.
That's brilliant.
And so that document ended up in Washington, D.C. as a copy to share with the Joint Chief of Staffs. This is the mentality
Yeah.
of a service provider. So from him, professionally, I learned a lot. And again, it's a choice I made, but I went and met with Dr. Stephen Covey,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he
It's been
inspired me.
yes. Yeah. Amazing
And
author. We
so,
love it.
yeah, he
Yeah.
inspired me. He said, here's the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting certified and I ended up coaching and I went around the country and I had a full-time job. I was so motivated that I'd take vacation from my full-time paying job to go work with others and help others because I believed that what Dr. Covey was telling you
Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
and
Definitely.
it was
100%.
effective. So I did that on my vacation time, if you will. So,
It's mad. But it's brilliant. I think the bit you've answered for me very much is that sometimes we can choose who's around us, but other times we can't. when we choose, we can be discerning, can't we? We can find people that we either aspire to be like or that will inspire us. But I think the example of the fella in the coma, he can't choose to be around them. He's got to be there because he's in their hospital. And but what I loved is the message he puts out says, "I've got to be here. I know I've got to hang about with you, but this is what I want." I love that, and I think that's so true. We can all think like that and think like, what, who do we want to be with? Who do we want to be around? And what do we get from them? I think it's a great thing. If I could get you to think about the company, so you walked into company real trouble. As we said, it was about $2.5 million in deficit. A lot of frightened people, I guess. Were they feeling it? And I guess so. What did you notice about the confidence of the folks in the building at that stage?
Well, there's a couple things really,
Mm,
and it really brought me back to several private conversations that I had with Dr. Covey. And Covey always told me it's people, number one, and then number two, people, and then number three, people.
mm,
And so I thought, okay, we got to focus on the people. And so we started figuring out and asking questions and bringing everybody together. And we wanted to figure out why we had such a high turnover rate. And so our culture was not positive. And so a lot of the mentality that we saw was I'd call it the 1985 model. It's command and control.
mm,
Command and control doesn't work it's not generational.
no,
People people don't respect, they don't aspire, they don't want to be led. They just want to feel valued. And so command and control is I don't really care who you are or what you think. I'm going to tell you what to do.
yeah,
And we all aren't on an assembly line. We actually interact with clients and people every day,
yeah,
internally and externally. These
yeah,
relationships have to be strong. They have to be trustworthy. And so we started having those conversations. A couple other things I think that were impactful, and it still drives me crazy to this day, is there is a huge difference between authority. So if you have authority, what does that look like with humility? And if people have authority, a lot of times they became like you thou shall, that you
yeah,
must, you have to. And I had better respect and a better response out of leaders that had humility, not
yeah,
authority. People said, this is the way I've done it. This is the way I've seen success, but we have to evolve. And especially if we're in an industry that's rapidly growing and changing, we can't sit back on 85 model of command and control and say thou shalt, because that's the quickest way to go out of business.
yeah,
And so what we did is I literally went up to the board. I drew the chart, and it was a bus and had 6 seats on the left side, 6 seats on the right side. Put the founder of the company, it's a 52-year-old legacy company, in the driver's seat, and he was transitioning out. Put a general title up there and a brief job description and said, take this sticky note and go get in your seat. So everybody did it. I mean, it was an action item. Everybody had to do something. They got up, they went up, they put their deal. So we started talking about that. Why? Why do you do that? No, nobody knows because that's what they were told. What should you be doing? Not quite sure. I don't have a strategic plan. Okay, well, let's do this. And it's a powerful tool for me, and I've used it occasionally trying to put together teams. I've actually used it in younger workforces when I was building teams that were successful and they went on, like you said. I I had the ability, I was blessed to work with a great group of young people. These young kids went on and they ended up winning 3 national championships, and they put me in the Hall of Fame as a coach.
wow,
So I learned from young people, and I thought some of this stuff actually works in people my age. So it's transitional. It's through generations. And I was
yeah,
like, let's try that on these adults, and let's see how it works from a 16-year-old to a 22-year-old now to a 52-year-old. And so one of the tools is, and I don't care which one you use, I think
yeah,
they're all
yeah,
effective, but I did psychological profiles.
yeah,
So I brought in a test, if you
yeah,
will, and it's called a culture, keyword,
yeah,
value, keyword. So CVI. So we wanted a core or culture value index.
yeah,
So I said, okay, let's have a stimulus and let's have a response. And then we're going to go ahead and say, okay, and if this stimuli occurs, how can I expect you to respond? How are you hardwired?
yeah,
Maybe you're born that way. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Did you get trained that way? Don't
yeah,
know. And so we did core value indexes.
yeah,
Next thing you know, I said, okay, based on the stimulus, that's a description. So what's the stimulus? How am I supposed to respond? What am I supposed to do? Maybe it's a customer complaint. Maybe it's lack of technology. Maybe it's a thing we created a widget years ago that's not effective anymore, and we lose bids because people know that. And so we created a brief job description based on that core value index. Within, I'd say, 6 months of the 12 seats, we had 8 people, new names, new titles, and new seats.
wow,
And so we knew we had the right. Some people left the organization voluntarily. They didn't take a different seat. They actually didn't ride the bus.
yeah,
And so they got out. We started backfilling based on core value. We started hiring people based on core value indexes. And then I transitioned to a new role as a CEO.
mm,
And so part of my responsibility was mergers and acquisitions and working with the family to make sure that, I had a recommendation for them how to spend our capital. And so we started looking at that and doing core value index testing on companies we were looking to partner with.
yeah,
Maybe we were going to buy part of it, maybe we're going to buy all of it.
mm,
And then we transitioned, I think I may have told you, but for 564 employees on my first day,
mm,
we quickly went to over 3,000 employees. So it wasn't reduce staff and get rid of the people who weren't helping the mission. It was actually, we're going to grow with the
no,
right people.
yeah,
Yeah, we really took off. We grew. We did mergers, acquisitions with companies that absolutely made us better.
mm,
And that's one of the things that I learned early on from Dr. Covey is, Ron, if you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room, man. It is absolutely exhausting doing all the lifting all day long.
that's
You want to be inspired, you want to run fast, you want to not pull and drag people. So you want the right people, but boy, it's fun chasing greatness and surrounding yourself with people that elevate you. They'll make you better. You'll have greater emotional resilience
yeah,
because they'll tell you, don't do that. Here's why. I've done it and I've failed. And
yeah,
we all know our biggest lessons and biggest advancements in anything is through failure.
yeah,
I learned to do that.
1000%,
Now I'm not going to
yeah,
do that again.
yeah,
I think it also creates a sustainable success rate. So now that I can do and move faster because I got a great team who's learned,
yeah,
I'll have better outcomes. And better outcomes to me might even be less stress.
yeah,
Less stress creates a happier environment in your culture, and everybody wants to get there.
yeah,
Everybody's not dreading going to work, but it's like, man, I love it. I have my purpose, my passion. Let's go. I got a great team,
yeah,
which I always look internally on leadership roles.
yeah,
And then I think you'll have greater outcomes because you've had the shared adversity together
yeah,
and you come together and it's an open, honest, and you're transparent and you can share that story. I just think we turned our organization from a 39 percent retention of key staff in full-time positions to 93.
wow,
It was an attitude that was contagious, infectious. I wanted to get there to learn. We asked our clients, what can we do better? So we implemented an ongoing, regular, what we call the customer satisfaction survey. Some of them were satisfied, but we wanted to, that was our goal.
yeah,
Then we asked ourselves, treat each other like a customer. What can we do to help that department do their job better? So we did basically an internal customer status. So we called it an employee satisfaction
yeah,
survey. But what can we do to better deliver our services?
yeah,
And maybe it's the supply chain issue. Well, let's have that conversation. Maybe it's a technician that didn't get to the job. Why not? Well,
yeah,
because we didn't have the available parts. So they had to stop by a store or whatever and pick up additional parts.
mm,
Well, we should know that and we should want them to be successful because they want to get it done
yeah,
and they want to get on to the next thing because they're problem solving.
yeah,
And they had the right role because core value index told us we're a problem solver.
yeah,
Give me the tools and I'll go solve the problem. And that's what I love to do. That's why I get my head off the pillow every day.
yeah.
And so that was a big step for us.
I love that. And I particularly liked what you said. There was a couple of things that we can unpack. Number one was, I loved the bit where you said we'd done the core values inventory on other companies you were looking to acquire. I
Yep.
thought, yeah, that's so because too often, I mean, my background was banking, for 16 years. And too often we'll look at the balance sheet, the accounts, and we'll forget that if particularly in your case you're going to take it over, you forget that the values are going to match it. Otherwise, you get an uphill battle. Maybe not always, but generally speaking, if you can get some matching values, it helps. That I thought that was really a smart move, Ron. Um, and I love this thing you'd said. Obviously, big agreement with learning from failure. If all we ever do is succeed, we just start to build up a pattern of, well, everything I do works, and sometimes it won't. But we haven't then got the experience to be able to go, how do I learn from that? So learning from failure, 1000%. But this part about the smartest person in the room, that was a lovely kind of turn on its head for me. The fact that you want to be surrounded by smart folks, you know?
You do.
Yeah,
It was one of the aha moments for me, if you will,
yeah,
because
yeah,
I always thought this experience that I've gained through loss or through setback is going to be the best thing that I can bring to the table. And then I show up and I look around and everybody's got it. And
yeah,
I'm like, okay, all right.
yeah,
So my greatest asset now is neutralized. What else can I bring to the table? What else? And then all of a
yeah,
sudden, I thought, now I know why God created me with two ears and one mouth.
yeah,
Let's listen to these stories and learn from them. Quit talking.
yeah,
That humility over authority. Let's apply that. Holy cow. It was amazing. The thing I also realized, and this is a fact, but we overlook it all the time because perhaps, I don't know what category you put me in, but let's just say, broadly label me as a middle-aged man,
yeah,
male. I have no idea what a 23-year-old female is thinking, or a 71-year-old woman is thinking,
no,
or a guy who has, in my case, I learned so much from people. They've only been in the United States, within probably the last 5, 6 years.
yeah,
And they came over because they wanted to experience the culture.
yeah,
They wanted to stay because they liked what they did and the people they met. Some of them came over for a job. Some of them came over for family. Some of them came over for a spouse. Because a lot of these people in these circles, I think I told you, they were in the military
yeah,
and they're around the world and they
yeah,
learned from all these different organizations and communities and cultures. And so I just sit back and I was like discerning this. I'm discerning and going, the greatest decisions that we've ever made involved young, middle-aged, seniors, women, men
yeah,
from all around the world that spoke very different languages. So as we grew, next thing you know, we have 24 sites, 7 states, 3,000 employees. Can you only imagine? You and I had a brief conversation, and it's not that political to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
It's common sense, but I had to figure out and I had to put together a team immediately because of politics and say, okay, what is Oklahoma? What is Texas? What is Kansas? What is Colorado? What do they look like? And oh, this governor says COVID's real and it's going to kill people. Stay in your house, don't leave. Other states down south, for some reason, said it's cold and flu season. We don't shut our factories down because the cold and flu season, it's the winter. Everybody gets cold and flu. It lasts 3, 4 weeks, go to work, whatever. So I had to have this basically international committee come together and say, this is real, this isn't, this is our return to duty policy, this is a real test, this is a measuring mark, what do we do? And so that also reinforced the fact that I need to talk to people, I need
yeah,
to listen more, I
yeah,
need to gain insight because these are issues that are going to impact not only our family internally, but our client.
yeah,
And so I learned so much from going through this global pandemic on how to be a better business leader
yeah,
because it is not one size fits all in each one of our small towns across the world.
no,
You have to adapt and adjust.
yeah, definitely. 100% agree. We've got to. And sometimes I don't know if you found this, but some folks you'll find, might appear to be confident, but underneath they're a bit terrified. Others, on the other hand, look nervous but rock solid. How do you tell the difference between them? You must have seen a bunch of these in your time.
Well, I'd have, and I tell you, I think that I've learned so much from the quiet, confident
Yeah,
leaders
yeah,
And again, it kind of ties back to that two ears and one mouth. They listen empathically to understand. And then, like Dr. Covey always said, you really don't understand until you restate the question to the other's satisfaction.
Yeah,
So, for example, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is, I'll use that other,
yeah,
what I hear you saying is, you were delayed on an install project, upsetting the client because they needed it. Maybe it was a building that was supposed to be occupied to manufacture something on Tuesday, and it's Tuesday, it's not done. So I'm listening. I understand it's not your fault as a technician. You didn't have the right tools to be successful. Pieces. Let's go way back upstream and
yeah,
let's have that conversation. And oh, by the
yeah,
way, we're all going to be in the same room when that occurs
yeah,
because I don't have the answer,
yeah,
but you have supply chain expertise. Is there another manufacturer we should be dealing with that is more timely? Yes. Well, why haven't we done that? Because, sir, we have a budget and I did not want to exceed the budget.
yeah,
So then we all get in the room and then all of a sudden you realize your budget is already blown because of these things called liquidated damages.
yeah,
So every day you miss a certificate of occupancy,
yeah,
it's $30,000 a day.
yeah,
What was the second lowest bid? It was $5,000. Do you understand the difference in $25,000 a day?
yeah,
Let's get that second manufacturer an opportunity.
yeah,
Let's pay a little bit more to ensure success
yeah,
for the client.
yeah,
We wouldn't have had that conversation if we hadn't have been completely honest, open, and transparent and trust each other. And
yeah.
the most important thing is we got together in the same room and hashed it out and solved a major problem.
How do you create that though, Ron? Because it's one of the big things we talk about is that psychological safety is a label we put on it. But how do you go about creating that? Because that's a great example of it existing there where people freely speak.
Well, for us, it was we wanted to recognize and reward people for creative thinking. And so we started creating literally a points system for all of our employees. And I could go in as a supervisor, a CEO. I could go in as unilateral, just
Yeah,
connections saying, Sally or Bill did this, did this, did this. And I could send it to HR and recognize them. Then we created an internal reward system in a store. So you had these points and you could literally get everything from t-shirts and hats to ball tickets.
yeah,
So you could go get free lunches, food. And so we really wanted to create that opportunity to recognize someone other than yourself.
yeah,
And I think that culture is like, okay, we talked about this briefly, but it's that old mindset of the 1+1.
yeah,
It's not a math problem. It's not two. It's one, you, one is me. So 1+1 is infinity. So 1+1+1 is creating that team.
yeah,
The one is you. The plus, everything we do together is going to be positive. And I'm going to create another plus, and it's going to be positive, and it's going to be you. And so that mentality is I want you on my team because you're going to add value and you're a plus. And everything we do in this formula is going to be positive. And it's going to include you and me, and we're going to celebrate success together.
it's really good. I like the 1+1, then plus one, just infinity. It made such sense when we were talking about it a bit earlier. Ron, if you don't mind me, in the middle of all this, something happened that was your worst nightmare, and it really you got this um, terminal illness diagnosis. Um, I don't want to rush past it. Would you mind telling us what happened and how do you deal with that in the middle of something where you're building this thing and you're clearly excited and giving everything to it? How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, it started back right out of high school, 18 years of age, a time you're supposed to be celebrating. You know,
Yeah,
you've created an opportunity to get out of the public education, move on to higher education,
yeah,
get a job, find the loved one, build a family, everything's good.
yeah,
And so all of a sudden in 87,
yeah,
I go that summer and I'm celebrating the fact that I graduated and I come home, I'm sick, I don't feel good, I'm weak, I go to the hospital. They find out that I got bit by a tick out in the Grand Canyon in Arizona.
wow,
And I had this rare disease called Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever. Two patients in the Kansas area had it. me and another person. Unfortunately, I had my brain swelled. I was in a coma, but I did recover and the other person didn't. And so I don't know what the difference was. And maybe I got it recognized sooner. But from that day forward, my mentality was that it sounds kind of interesting, but I really dove down into my faith.
Yeah,
And I said, God, there is something about, me, something that you want to save me, something you brought me back. I've always been a Christian.
yeah, yeah,
So why me? Why am you saving me? And I went away, and within a year, I went to college. I found the love of my life,
yeah.
and we ended up getting engaged, and we got married in college. Now, I don't want to get into the genealogy or biology, but I will tell you that I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
Men mature at a different level than women.
Oh, 1000%.
Oh
Absolutely.
my gosh. And I
Definitely.
found the beautiful, mature lady who was also from a divided house,
Yeah.
who also had, setbacks as a child, who, just the stories were so similar. Like God put us on the same path. And so we ended up getting married in college, and she kept me on the right path and focused. Well, 1997, we're sitting there with our first baby. We had a toddler. And all of a sudden, here it is. I'm weak. I'm tired. I can't recover. I felt like I got up in the morning. I didn't sleep at all that night.
Mm.
And I go to the hospital. They ran all these blood tests and biopsies, and they diagnosed me with Wilson's disease. And very new diagnosis. And what they found out was my body, it doesn't have the ability to process copper. And so there's things that I ate every day, and some of the foods I ate a tremendous amount of had copper. Things that come out of the water, primarily seafood, fish, a lot of other things that like pork. And so those were things that I ate every day. Whole grain cereal comes out of the earth into the plant, and I ate whole grain cereal 2, 3 times a day, some days. And so the copper had suffocated my liver. And so they gave me a terminal diagnosis, 0 to 36 months. If I did this, if I tried that. And to their credit, they said, but this is so rare, we're going to send you to the Mayo Clinic. And so I went to the Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota, probably the best GI doctors in the world. And I don't want to undersell anyone else or discredit anyone, but they said, if we try this, if we try that, we can try these different techniques. Nothing's proven, nothing's given, but we might be able to buy you some time, create a sustainable life for now. Of course, I'm all in. I called my wife and I just said, you're not going to believe this, but Wilson's is a disease. It is terminal. There is no cure. We're going to have to figure this out. My wife's pregnant with baby number two. We got the toddler, young kid. And so we were like, I don't know what we're going to do. I ended up going to one of God's greatest creations, largest freshwater lake in the world, Lake Superior, up in Minnesota. I sat on the shore and I said, God, I dealt with it last decade. I went through the 80s. You challenged me. I changed. I became a better person. I'm very grounded in my faith. It's 97. It's next decade. It's the 90s. What are we
Yeah.
doing? Why did you bring me Wilson's disease? What's going on? And through that diagnosis and through all the stuff going on, it just created a resilience in me and a toughness. My wife said, isn't Wilson's disease, from what we've learned, isn't it hereditary? Yes. Okay, so I had two brothers. So they both went in and got tested. Both brothers came back negative. My wife said, not a doctor, but that seems strange.
Mm.
So she called my mother, and the one that had left me years ago
Yeah.
in elementary school. And that's why I was with my grandparents. And so she said, I guess I have to, be honest with you. They don't have the same father.
Yeah.
So my biological father never met me, never knew who I was, never knew about the abuse I took from my stepfather all those years. My wife found him in Seattle, Washington.
Oh,
He got on an airplane, he flew down, we met. He went in and got tested. And sure enough, he's my biological father. And so through that adversity and through terminal illness, through the Mayo Clinic, through doing all the blood work, screen, all the background, I found my real father.
Wow.
And I found him just before he passed away. And again, it built a resilience and a toughness in me. And that it's like, okay, my emotional resilience right now, my emotional toughness, it came through prayers and it came through discernment, but it came through my grandparents, my love of my life, my soulmate. And what I didn't tell you is her grandfather's a World War II guy. Her dad's a Vietnam guy, both Army, both people of service, both raised their hand, volunteered to give their lives up for their neighbors. So she held me accountable. And she's like, we're going to do everything the doctors say, and by God, you will not die.
Yeah.
And here I am today. Now it goes back to 2019.
Yeah.
April 1st, and it's most people say, well, that's April Fool's Day. This can't be
Of course,
real.
can't be.
I'm at the hospital again. I'm very tired, very weak, side pain, driving just, I can't sleep. I go in, they do a CAT scan, and they said, here's the issue, Ron. Your pancreas is destroyed. You have pancreatic cancer. We're transporting you to an oncology hospital. I got in an ambulance. My wife's not with me. They transport me. My wife meets me at the oncology center. She goes in. What's going on? Your husband has pancreatic cancer. We Google it. Here we
Mm.
go online. What's pancreatic cancer? Heard of it. I don't have any family dealing with it. Basically says you're not going to make it. There's very people that survive. Few people survive it. Some of the most, famous people in the world. Steve Jobs had just recently died. And so it's like guy with all the brains and all the money and all the resources in the world can't buy a pancreas, can't fix one.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? So we had a team of doctors, two very, again, this will drive home the decision-making point,
Yeah.
two very powerful women oncologists.
Yeah.
And so my entire team of doctors at the Mayo Clinic were all males. So I have these young, brilliant female doctors come in after weeks of long testing. They were standing at the end of my bed. My wife was sitting on the bed with me. And the one said, do you want the good news or the bad news? And I said, ma'am, with all due respect, I want to end our meeting today with good news. She said, sounds good. Bad news. All the tests, the ultrasound, the CAT scans, the MRIs, the blood work. Your pancreas is 80% destroyed. And I said, that doesn't sound good, but it sounds like hope. And she said, you have destroyed your pancreas. And she held up a pharmaceutical drug. And she said, you take this? And I said, yes, for my glucose, because I am a diabetic. And she said, well, this drug is supposed to stimulate and encourage you to increase insulin production in your pancreas. But it has this fine print down here that says may cause acute pancreatitis. And it has. How long have you been on it? 18 months. Well, this pharmaceutical cure for your disease has caused you worse outcomes.
Mm.
And I said, that doesn't sound good. She said, well, the good news is I'm taking you off the pancreatic cancer list. I don't know if we can save you. Your pancreas may never respond and recover, and you could die from this
Mm.
because you need a pancreas and yours is not working properly. We're going to put you in around the clock care, feeding tube. We'll do everything we can to help accelerate the healing process. And I said, with all due respect, I'm not going to around the clock adult daycare, I called it,
Yeah. Yeah.
jokingly, because I'm still thinking, okay, the C word is now out of my vocabulary. I'm
Yeah.
not going to deal
Yeah.
with that. I said, my wife's a nurse. She'll take care of me. She always has. And I didn't say, believe it or not, this will be the third time somebody's told me I'm going to die.
Yeah.
But mentally, I'm thinking this is the third time somebody's told me I'm going to die. And so they said, I had no idea your wife's a nurse. They said, you're going to have to figure this out, but we don't recommend that treatment option. So they left my charts, walked out of the room. My wife looked at me and she goes, now you know damn good and well I'm not a nurse. And I said, you also know that I'm not a good candidate for in-home daycare. She goes, what are we going to do? And I said, let's pray.
Yeah.
So we prayed and I said, we're going to go home and I'm going to do everything they said that they were going to do in the care facility
Yeah.
and you're going to oversight it. And honey, you can hold me accountable.
yeah.
You've been empowered since I was 18 years old. And she did. And almost 18 months later, I passed my first test.
Wow.
My pancreas had healed and it was functioning. I could now deal with my diabetes and what was a long-term impact, on my body. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
we got through it together. So it was just an amazing adventure for us again,
Yeah, yeah,
third time in my life.
yeah,
But that's where I think the resilience comes from.
yeah,
And so it's always okay. I got it. I'm processing it. I'm going to discern it. And then I'm going to go to my tribe and we're going to have a frank conversation. And I'm
yeah,
going to say, how are we going to do this?
yeah,
What are we going to do? What do
yeah.
I need to do? And I give you permission to hold me accountable.
Wow. It's amazing. And I think it's you started parts of the story. There was this, it's almost like all the things you've gone through had enabled you to deal with this. I think it was the experience that we call it evidence, the evidence that you'd gathered that you could succeed at that. Succeed. It might have been non-related, but all of a sudden you gather all that evidence together, and all the people that you've have shown you the evidence, and you use it as fab, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that because it's a big thing. Um, If we move back to the more mundane things now after that, which is selling the company, and what I
Okay.
loved, I'd asked you before, and I said, "So how'd that feel?" And you'd said, "It felt like watching someone else raise your child." Tell me about that. So you, yeah,
Yeah, I think we deal with that. And I've had that conversation even through the mergers and acquisitions and talking to family-owned companies, small, medium, and large. Let's see, 50 probably employees to 500 employees, and having that conversation with the founder and just saying, what do you want? What is your purpose? What do you have a legacy, you have a great reputation. What do you want to do? And more times than not, when banks come in, they make these financial investments and decisions, and
yeah,
rightfully so, because they have people that have invested in them. They come in and they say, okay, we want to make some changes. We want to buy your company. And in the case of our organization, it was a family owned and operated company, 52 years. The founder was transitioning to after, full-time work,
yeah,
and son, one of seven children, worked in the company, and they were the new leader and president and were going to ascend and take over the company. So they had basically a homegrown replacement strategy dad
mm-hmm.
had in his own family. And so as we grew the company, we got bigger and we added additional departments. And I told you we grew around the country. Then we started being attractive to a lot of larger potential investors and buyers, not only just to partner, but to acquire. And so private equity came in and made an offer to the family. And so we had to go to a board meeting, leadership team on one side, family on the other, if you will. Founder sitting there going, "My company's not for sale." Son's coming in going, "Well, let's understand what we're saying no to first. What are you saying no to?" And so I'm kind of in the middle again, and the leadership team is in the middle, and we're going, "Okay, what's this going to do? Is this the right decision or not?" And you and I have talked previously. My long-term strategy was to be in business with my wife.
yeah,
And so I was going to transition out of the organization, at a certain time anyway during this plan. And so father basically said, not for sale. Son says, let's hear the deal. And I'm in the middle saying, not for sale. It's a legacy company. The goal was to keep it and sustain it, forever as a source of revenue for the family and to preserve and protect dad's legacy. The leadership team, obviously, they're nervous because people are like, well, if somebody buys this, I'll probably lose my
yeah,
job.
yeah,
And so they're in the middle, not necessarily having a vote, but having a conversation and letting everybody know how they felt. Through these processes and now involving our own company, I sat back and I realized that the stress is really created by the fact that the financial institutions want to come in, buy, and then
mm,
they use this terminology like make improvements,
yeah,
grow, scale.
yeah,
And then we realize that one of the first things they do is they say, okay, he or she or they collectively are paid too much.
Yeah.
So all this culture you created through rewards and salaries and bonuses and increased time off, whatever that might be, better benefits, that was a huge one. Hey,
Yeah.
we started investing in our employees. One of our transitional changes was a 401k.
Wow.
You put in 5% of your personal money. By gosh, you're invested in. I'm in too. I give you
Yeah.
5%. So the family came back and was matching contributions, and everybody was like, they invested in me. Well, financial organizations could be going, that might not be the best idea
Mm. Yeah.
because we wanted to increase our stock value. So we need to, the only way to do that is really get rid of operational expense.
Yeah.
Your number one operational expense and using capital is people.
Yeah.
So you start getting rid of the high wage earners. Well, there goes the experience. There goes the relationship with the client, the management with the team, the respect shown to others. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And so that's why we had that conversation. We talked about it. No one's going to raise your child the way you would. And that's how I look at that. So your child will be different. I'm not saying it's always going to be worse. Sometimes they actually do add value and they bring
Yeah.
in people that
Yeah.
that in the organization they bought needed that.
Yeah.
They needed that. And the leadership team was asking for others to come in. And so sometimes it works out, but a lot of the times in the ones I saw, there was just a cultural difference, a change because no one's raising your child the way you would.
Yeah. They're not. They're not going to do it. And in the end, it sold for a 7 multiple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did.
Amazing. Amazing. It just feels like sometimes it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen that in so many families and sort of third generation families that we've gone to talk to, and it's a difficult thing, but it happened, and you done it, which is great, really good. Ron, just pulling it to a close, and I think there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. Was just what do you want people to take away from the conversation we've had? We've covered a fair amount of ground. If there was one thing you wanted them to take away, what would that be?
I think that you need to make sure, and I'll go back to where we started our conversation, surround yourself with the right people, create a tribe that inspires you, that makes you better. Ensure you're not the smartest person in the room,
Yeah.
but the thing you need to do is empower them and let them hold you accountable because it could be somebody like we talked about, it's in your family,
Yeah.
it could be a mentor, it could be a friend.
Yeah.
But if you surround yourself with those people, you're going to make better decisions and have better outcomes. I guarantee it.
It's great advice. Great advice. Ron, where can people find out more about you, about the books, about you if they want to engage as a speaker or whatever they want to do with you? Where's the best place to get hold of you?
The best thing is to go to our website,
Yeah.
rcdevelopmentsolutions.com. And there's articles and information out there about myself, my family, my wife.
Yeah.
She's my rock. It's ironically, her name's Raquel.
No
And
way.
so, yep. And so I always call her my rock. And you can read about her in our book,
Yeah.
Unbroken. And it says from bully to boardroom.
Yeah.
Talks about being inspired by my wife, my grandfather, just so many people that are just awesome
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah.
And then the other book that we put out together
Yeah.
was basically me and my best friend. And it talks about that tribe and that relationship. And in there, I always say to people, log out, log out. So when you
Yeah.
log out and
Yeah.
then clock out,
Yeah.
and then what I always say is hang up and hang out. So it's kind of work-life balance related.
That's
So
good.
you have
That's
to
useful.
find that. And in that book, it's called Me and My Best Friend,
Yeah.
30 years of 30 stories. So from 1993 to 2023, his wife is my wife's best friend too. That's rare.
Wow. It's amazing. I'm going to put all the links in the podcast description, which is when that goes out, people can find it the way at the podcast website. So make sure all Ron's links are in there as well for anyone who wants to find out more about him. Ron, thank you so much. It's been an honour to spend time with you, to find out about you, to hear your amazing stories. And I'm sure they'll help the folks that listen to the podcast to just take that one little nugget, of which there are many, and just make things a wee bit better. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on, John. I appreciate the
Pleasure.
conversation.
It's a pleasure.